Hey folks, Phil the B-Man here. I'm going to try to make a silk purse out of a sow's ear here. I've got a video we made in the summer when we were pulling honey. I intended it to be a bit of a demonstration of how the Ezyloader really facilitates loading honey. I can tell you those boxes were heavy and it was hot, and without the Ezyloader it would have been a long day. The audio on that video is not great. It was windy. Certainly circumstances where other methods of pulling honey would have probably been not effective. It was too windy for blackboards or fume boards to work. It was too late in the year for set down. The bees were robbing, and yet we got the job done fairly easily. But I really want this to be just a little bit of a discussion about the costs and benefits of the Ezyloader. It's not a cheap machine, and for most beekeepers, it's a high-ticket item. Had conversations with a few friends on my recent road trip out west who were like humming and hawing about it. I don't know, I don't see the value. So I thought I'd just work it through the way we teach our students in diploma agriculture at the University of Manitoba to work through a problem like this, and maybe even those students might benefit from this video, seeing how we do this. So the Ezyloader is not a cheap machine. You're going to pay $60,000. So the purchase price is going to be $60K. And it's very important when you do an assessment like this that you don't freak out about that number, because any business decision, you got to spread your investment out over a reasonable period of time. So I'm going to choose a 10-year window on this. Could be 5, could be 20. You got to give a tool a reasonable amount of time to pay you back. You're not going to get $60,000 of value out of an Ezyloader the first day you use it. You got to give it some time. So this is going to be a 10-year assessment. So over 10 years, if you didn't have the $60K and you wanted to finance that, I'm just using very simple numbers here. So 10 years, and let's assume interest rates were 5%. The interest would be around $17.9K. Almost $18,000. And then we got to total those up and then put it over 10 years, which will give us $7.79K per year. Right? So notice what I've done here is I've said 60,000 plus the 18,000 almost to finance, and then I've totaled those, put it over 10 years, so per year cost is let's say 7.8 thousand per year. You also should include a cost for depreciation, and so I've just for the sake of simplicity, just thinking in terms of straight line depreciation. A lot of people use declining balance. There's arguments for both, but for an assessment like this, let's just use straight line. And I'm also estimating that we're going to lose half the value over the 10 years. Now that's a questionable assumption. Beekeeping equipment tends to hold its value very well. We all know stories, those of us who are beekeepers know stories of the guy who bought a stainless steel extractor in the 60s used it for 40 years, and sold it for what he paid for it and maybe more. I see beekeeper forklifts often selling 20 years, 30 years old, beat and worked hard, and then auction off for more than they would have been purchased for. So the beekeeping equipment tends to depreciate at very low rates. I'm assuming 50% value over 10 years. I actually think that's extremely high assumption. Personally, if I was to sell my Ezyloader that I've owned for almost 10 years, I'd expect to get what I paid for it. I bought mine for 30, and a new one is 60, and so quite frankly the price of the new ones has inflated such that it's buoyed up the price of the used machine. So the depreciation might be significantly overstated here, but I think that's not necessarily a bad thing. But anyway, that if you take 30,000, half of the 60, over 10 years, so it'd be 30,000 per year over 10 years is $3,000 per year. And now if we add all that up, we get almost 10.8K per year is our owner's annual cost of owning that machine. Now, how do we pay for that? How do we make it worth? And so, talking to some of those same folks, we compared size of honey crews and so on. I think my Ezyloader is saving me 2 employees over the harvest season. So, 2 people for the 6 weeks of harvest. Let's think about what that's worth. So you have the 2 people times the 40 hours times, let's say, $15 per hour. And those numbers are also conservative, right? You often work more than 40 hours a week, and you often pay more than 15 if you have a good employee. So, these numbers aren't crazy either, I don't think. You start having a crew that needs to operate forklifts and so on. We're not in minimum wage territory anymore. And these numbers, of course, are in Canadian dollars for folks watching from around the world. And so that adds up to $7,200 or $7.2 thousand. So I can cover most of my out-of-pocket expense, but I can't cover my depreciation just on the savings alone. So now you start saving. If you use that Ezyloader to load hives spring and fall, and you don't have to bring a hired person with you to stack hives, you'll save more. So this is honey season only, which is the way I use my Ezyloader. I know there's lots of Ezyloaders out there that use it as their single lifting device year round, and so their savings would be significantly more. For me, very short season, that's saving. Okay, so it doesn't entirely pay for itself just on labor savings. You probably have to basically you got to hope that depreciation isn't as high as I'm estimating here. Also say that, and I remember old Herb Isaac, when he was a salesman for Ezyloader, would always say, if you can't afford it, just run another 100 hives. And sorry, I'm just going to scroll over here to get my numbers. Herb Isaac would always say, If you're not sure you can afford it, just run an extra 100 hives and it'll pay for itself. You will have, take the labor out of the job, and having an extra 100 hives is no problem. And taking the labor out of the job so you can run more, I would tend to agree with that. But I'm not sure his numbers add up here. So again, we're taking total cost, 10.8 per year. How many more hives at what margin would you have to run that machine to make it pay? And it seems like at first you're going, actually, 100 hives is excessive, right? Like in my case this year, if I take my long-term average crop of 170 pounds, and how many pounds do I need to make at maybe average price of $2 a pound? I only probably have to have about 30, 35 hives to earn that. But every hive has other costs. You can't just take the money from one hive and say, that's paying for that machine, and these other hives are going to pay for my fixed costs, and these hives are going to pay for my variable costs, and these hives are going to pay for me to go on vacation. No. Every hive has to pay its fair share of the total enterprise. So if you run an extra 100 hives, you have to have enough margin on those 100 hives to pay for an Ezyloader. So what I did was I calculated the necessary margin. So on the 10K, if I'm getting 170 pounds per hive, and I want 100 hives to earn that 10.8, what kind of margin do you need to have? And so you basically want to say, take the 10.8, divide it by the 170, divide it by the 100, and you'll come up with and then you want to take off the price per pound that all of your other operations cost. And so what I get is, for 100 hives to pay it, I need 63 cents per pound margin for those 100 hives to pay for the Ezyloader. So, and I don't think that's realistic, right? Cost of production is not 63 cents below the market price. Maybe one year when there's a shortage, when there's a drought, and you don't have a crop anyway. Long term, that's unrealistic. So the idea that 100 hives was going to pay for your Ezyloader, that's not realistic. You start adding 200 or 300 hives, and you get that down to 33 or maybe 15 cents a hive, right? Divide that by a half or a third. Then you're totally in the game. So, I think that, if you think, how many more hives do I have to run to make this thing pay? I would peg the number at 250 to get a reasonable margin. So now, and that assumes, big Manitoba crops, and that assumes, that you're actually selling it at a profit and not at a loss, which is very hard to get any machinery to pay for itself if your enterprise is losing money. So I think there's good news and bad news here. Is when you think about the cost of that Ezyloader, it's not $60,000, it's something like $7,800 per year. And this interest rate, by the way, is calculated 5%. So interest rates right now are substantially less than that. So there's some savings to be had there. Maybe it's $7,000 a year. The depreciation is probably overstated, so it might not be any, but you should assume that there will be some. And so You could maybe save this cost. You could get that down to maybe 8,000 if your pencil's really sharp and you actually line up specific financing, and you plan to hold your Ezyloader for more than 10 years. There's ways of getting that number down. So now, would you be willing to pay $7,000 or $8,000 a year to never have to lift a full honey box? Yeah, you would. And so that's maybe part of the decision. You can save nearly all of that money by not having to hire extra people to help you with the heavy lifting. So it's possibly a nearly break-even proposition. If you can expand your operation in order to grow into the affording the Ezyloader, you're probably needing to add a couple hundred hives to your operation, which is an ambitious project, and that bears costs of its own. And you can get into a bit of a treadmill where you say, oh, if I'm bigger, I can afford a new tool, but that new tool has costs of its own, and so then you got to get bigger yet, and pretty soon you're on this vicious treadmill of growth. And as long as you keep growing, it all works out. If you ever stop, you hit a wall pretty hard. So I think this is a good example of a pretty serious calculation that for people who have an Ezyloader, it's a no-brainer. I wake up in a cold sweat when I think, oh, maybe it's broken down and I'll have to work today. But on the actual numbers, it's a tough call. So I hope that's helpful to everyone, and enjoy the rest of the loading of the honey. You'll see that we're busy when we're out in the field. No one's standing around, or maybe I am. My employees tend not to. They're super awesome, and but no one's going home beat. We hop in the truck and we're laughing and joking. So certainly having an Ezyloader also, I think there's probably, like I'm using this $15 an hour number because I don't have to pay muscle men to show up, right? I can make do with employees that don't spend the whole weekend at the gym all winter. High school kids are what I rely on primarily for employees, and that machine taking all the serious work out of the job allows me to probably save a cost on the labor as well. All right, I hope that was what you need to decide for yourself. This is not endorsed by anyone. I'm not trying to sell you an Ezyloader. I'm just telling you how maybe you could think through it in a way that gets you a bit more past the 60K, which is pretty daunting, right? That's a big number, right? Such a simple machine to basically be more or less, and for folks from don't know what the value of Canadian dollar is, that's pretty much a really nice brand new pickup truck, even in COVID times. You're gonna have to wait for your pickup truck. They don't have them, but if you say you're willing to pay $60,000, they'll put you on a list and get you one. So that's we're at F-150 with all the trimmings is going to be in that range. So that's there's a lot of technology in one of those trucks. Why is such a simple machine so expensive? Well, it's scale, right? They don't make that many of them. They got to ship them all the way from Australia. They need their costs to cover their R&D and so on. So that's their price. You can argue with that, but if you don't, right? If you want an Ezyloader, you're gonna have to pay it. So I don't regret purchasing mine. I've had it for a while, and it's definitely been a big part of my success over the last 10 years.
back to that. All right. You can loosen that top green one off and put it on the short one.